Good afternoon and welcome to another virtual speaker series hosted by the Mays Innovation Research Center. Today we'll be hearing from Maia Donohue, who recently wrote The Startup Mentor. He is also the Senior Facilitator and Director of College Partnerships at 3-Day Startup. So in case you missed it, we will be doing questions throughout. So if you have a question, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask that, or if you're not comfortable, you can send it through the chat and we'll make sure to answer it at the end. But now I'd like to turn it over to Maia.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I'm going to share my screen and have the slide deck. And I think if there's long talks, I might move between the slide deck and off. But yeah, like she said, definitely, like Shelby said, definitely feel free to. I'll be asking a lot of questions where you guys can just jump in and give answers and stuff like that. So, so I will share the screen right now. Where are we here? Let's just try this. Can you see the slide deck right now? Okay, great, awesome.
Yes.
Cool. So the book is The Startup Mentor, how brilliant mentors can help you launch your startup. And I just shared a link and it's available in PDF, Kindle, and paperback as well. And we're gonna be giving away one free copy of the book to somebody here that I can either mail out or a Kindle copy if that's what you want. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, how brilliant mentors can help you launch your company. Shelby, you already gave a pretty good introduction to me, so I guess we don't need to go over that again. But with my time with 3-Day Startup, what I will say is that I travel the world a lot and facilitate these 3DS programs. Has anybody done one? I can see like Grace and Lexi, if you can raise your hand or not. I'm not sure if anybody here has done a 3-Day Startup before. But if you have or have not, it's a full 3-day entrepreneurship program where we work with early stage founders and help them launch their companies. And a lot of the research in the book has come through that community. So the cool thing is it's reaching out to people all around the world in 5, 6 continents and learning what they know about mentorship and how to really make the most out of that. So let's see. I want to start off by first of all asking, what is a mentor and why do we need one? Kind of want to like hear what anybody thinks about that. It's like, what is a mentor and why do we need one? Like, what's the big deal with mentorship anyways? Any thoughts on that?
Well, mentors have gone through all these things that, startup businesses will eventually go through, and they can share the information that they've learned along the way so that others can be successful. Yeah,
exactly. So you're talking about the experience element of that, and that's really critical. That when somebody is opening a business for the first time, starting a business for the first time, you have no experience to fall back on. So all of it is new. And you feel like guaranteed I'm making mistakes that somebody who's done this before would probably know better and not make this mistake, right? So a mentor can be a person who recognizes things you're going through and sort of stop you before you get there. Anything else? What else would a mentor be really useful for? The experience is kind of the first thing. So you hit the first one. Mentors help founders by sharing their network, their experience, and their network. So we talked about the experience already. The network is also really critical because as university students, if you want to launch a company, you think of like what your network is as far as how much influence they have and all that. And probably the chances are pretty low, right? You know other college students and whatnot. You don't know a lot of heavy hitters. And mentors are people who can help share their network to get you there as well. You make a big impression and they're willing to just open up their network a bit and start talking to people they know about you, introducing you to potential advisors, angel investors, people who can help spread the word, things like that. So the network part is really, really critical as well. So I want to ask as well, how is a mentor different from an advisor? Anybody have any ideas? It's a thing that comes up a lot, so I kind of wanted to hit that one fairly early. So here are some of the differences between a mentor and advisor. A mentor is very much personal. It's somebody who is there largely helping you on an individual level. An advisor is much more for your company. They're helping you and your co-founders all together. A mentor receives no kind of actual hard benefits. Like they don't get equity in the company or they're not on payroll or anything like that. Where an advisor almost certainly receives points or some type of retainer salary as well. Mentors can oftentimes help with like life issues. A lot of people I interviewed for the book said that their best mentors, it wasn't about like helping with your marketing or something like that, or your competitive analysis. It was a lot of times personal stuff like, how do I deal with keeping my relationship going or having imposter syndrome? I feel like I'm not like a natural born entrepreneur, and how do I sort of deal with that? Where an advisor has a very specific role. Usually you're reaching out to that person because they have some very specific role. Like for instance, like if you're doing like a medical startup, for instance, you would want somebody who understands that area of medicine, and that's why you have them there. And then last of all, I think really critically with a mentor, you don't have to ask that person's permission. It's a little bit like asking somebody if they'll be your boyfriend or girlfriend, like it's very grade school. Like you don't need to like get the confirmation, so to speak. It just kind of happens naturally. Absolutely. You have to ask an advisor for their permission. You just don't. And I've even heard people say like, I've seen myself on people's slide deck as an advisor when I never agreed to that. And that is just not okay. It's a thing that you have to agree to. I wrote the book because mentorship is really the single most wasted resource available to founders today. There's a lot of things out there like that get a lot of attention, such as fundraising, building prototypes, that kind of stuff. But mentorship, how to use the people in your community around you to really learn, to grow, to build, to get to the next step is something that is vastly wasted. And I know this because in my own personal experience on both ends, as well as the people I talked to for the book, a very common theme was that founders would oftentimes come into a first meeting, no preparation whatsoever, no real sense of like what you even wanted to get out of the meeting, why are we here question. And basically nothing would come out of the meeting. They would just have coffee for a half hour, not take any notes, and that would be the end of it. And the really good stuff doesn't come out of just one meeting. It comes out of repeated exposure and working with that person over time. All right, so has anybody heard the term social capital? Does that sound familiar to anybody here? Any kind of guess of what actually is social capital?
Influence.
Yeah, influence is a good way of putting it. It's kind of like, who do you know? What do they think of you? All that kind of stuff. So influence is one interesting way of looking at it. Yeah. What else? Anything else about social capital? Well, one thing about social capital. Oh, go ahead.
It could tie back to what you're talking about, networking and being able to use that as an advantage.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep. And being able to kind of an advantage, being able to get that influence within your community and whatnot. And one thing like outside of the startup landscape and whatnot, even for all of you, if you're looking to get a job right out of graduating from A&M, it's oftentimes your social capital which will make a big difference. You think of it like, imagine one job, you fire an application out and you don't know anybody there. The other one, somebody that you know pretty well, like they're like a parent or a relative, works at that company or something like that, and knows you quite well. Which one do you have a better chance of getting the job at? It's definitely the latter one, right? And they know you, they know who you are, what you're all about. So I describe social capital is it's your network plus your reputation. So having a network alone is not enough because that's sort of a neutral quality. I know some people, and I'm sure you all do, who have a pretty big network, but for the wrong reasons. People don't say good things about this person, that this person isn't really all that trustworthy, or a lot of drama, or all kinds of stuff. So having a network alone isn't really the best thing, but having a network plus reputation where people say good things about you, are willing to vouch for you, speak on your behalf, is really, really fundamental. We've all been in a room where somebody is talking about a person either in the favorable light or the unfavorable light, right? And that's kind of what your social capital is. You want to, as a founder, build up enough social capital that even when you're not around, people are saying good things about you. They're talking about how amazing you are, all the good stuff that you do. And that plays a huge role in other people wanting to help you, wanting to sort of lend you some of their social capital as well. So how do you generate social capital? Have any of you ever been to some sort of networking event where you feel like the people there, all they do is talk, but nobody listens? I can see some of you nodding your heads. Like, we've all been there before, where everybody just wants to talk about themselves. One really great way to build up social capital is just to be a great listener. Hear what people have to say, listen to them, give feedback, all that kind of stuff. So being a great listener is something that is an easy way to start to generate some social capital really early. Second thing is helping other people, finding ways to help those around you. oftentimes that's something like making an introduction. It could be giving feedback on something. There's all different kinds of ways of helping other people, but that's the kind of thing where you really start to build up a reputation and people feel like, oftentimes that's where, you have somebody say something like, that person owes me a favor. That's another way of kind of talking about social capital, where like, I made this really great introduction that really helped this person like get a job or get with an angel investor, and that person like quote unquote owes me a favor. That's because you've generated some positive social capital, right? And then building is the biggest thing. We've all been around a lot of people who talk about things but don't necessarily get something done. If you can build up a reputation as being a person who actually gets the things done that you said you were going to do, that builds a huge amount of social capital as well. I also like to think of social capital from the standpoint as something that can in many ways be lent and borrowed the same way actual capital can. For instance, like if you help somebody out, you are in a sense sort of lending them some of your social capital. And that's where that person might quote unquote owe you a favor. If you ask for a big introduction, you are sort of borrowing some social capital as well. And for instance, like if you get an introduction with a really high level person, the person who made the introduction, their social capital either goes up or down based on how well that meeting went. If you really made a really great impression, that person's social capital gets a boost as well. I might have the story in here, I can't remember, but real life story of this was, I'll just say it was a very influential person somewhere in Texas in the startup scene. And this person was making a whole bunch of introductions to sort of like entrepreneurs in his network to really high level angel investors and people like that. So he was facilitating a lot of these introductions. So this person was at a party gathering, and this guy showed up, and he's one of the main kind of mentors who he's been making a lot of these introductions to. And I won't say who this guy is, but I'll just say he's worth about 72 million. You've all almost certainly heard of his company that he founded. And guy number one says to him, like, hey man, I've got a founder I'd really like you to meet, another founder. So I'll go ahead and just make the introduction if that's cool. And this guy, the angel investor dude, says, yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to pass him. And first guy's like, oh, okay. Something wrong? He says, honestly, I mean, you keep introducing me to all these founders, and they don't know what they're doing. They're not ready. They don't show up prepared. They don't even know why they want to meet with me. It's just not a good use of my time. So I think I'm just going to pass. You can imagine this guy was so humiliated by this, and the crazy thing is it wasn't even his fault. It was really the founders who weren't preparing anything like that. He mentioned one of the guys, he said, the guy you introduced me to last week, I showed up at his table and I said, you ready? And he looks up at me and says, ready for what? I said, you booked a meeting with me. It's in our calendar, and the guy was just completely unprepared. So he basically said like, no go, I'm going to pass. And as you can imagine, that generated a lot of, like bad social capital for the person I'm talking about in the story. So it just kind of gives you an idea of how social capital can work when it's sort of lent and borrowed. Any thoughts or questions on this?
Hey, Maya, really quick, would you mind just defining what an angel investor is for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody know like the difference between an angel investor and a VC? I can define it, but if you guys want to answer, I'm kind of curious if any of you know. What is an angel investor?
I do.
Okay.
Angel investor is usually at an earlier stage of the company, and they provide smaller amounts of capital. But the one thing they really do provide is guidance, because you're usually finding angel investors in your space. Mm-hmm. They've been through that space. They kind of know the ropes, whereas a VC is pretty much money focused, investing other people's capital, and they're usually at later funding rounds.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's a really good definition. And you mentioned other people's capital. VCs spend other people's money, and angel investors spend their own money. Like you said, angel investors are much earlier, and they usually invest in groups. So in Austin, we have CTAN, the Central Texas Austin Angel Network, and it's not very often you hear an angel investing by him or herself. They usually get like 9 other angels to each give $50,000 or something like that, and that's how that works. So. But angel investors, if you want to really scale a company, they're a pretty crucial group of people. And angel investors in particular, like you mentioned, offer a lot of feedback as well and mentorship, basically. So great definition. Thank you. So
what was the what did VC stand for?
Venture capitalist. I'm sorry. Yeah, venture capitalist. And venture capitalists are part of a firm. And where like an angel investors might do a seed round that's like $500,000. you'd be hard pressed to find venture capitalists investing anything less than 2 million, for instance.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so a couple of different games. And also, I think with venture capital, oftentimes you're expected to grow much more quickly. You know, they want, like, if I'm investing in your company, I want to see 10x growth. I want to see the company grow very quickly. And I've known a lot of founders who basically say, that's great, but I don't think we want to grow that quickly right now. So we're gonna pass on that. So yeah, that's a little bit of angel investors, VCs. And the angel thing is really good because a lot of angels are mentors as well. And that's one of the key things you're looking for with that angel investors. Would this person be a good mentor for my company? I've talked to a lot of founders in this book who one of their first angel investors was either yes, great mentor, or terrible mentor. You know, and I talked to one of the prominent people I featured in the book, talked about how he basically had to kick his first angel investor off the board of his company because he was just such a pain in the butt. And, you know, getting calls all hours of the night about like his slide deck and stuff like that. It's like, dude, I'm having dinner with my family. I don't want to talk about the font size in my slide deck right now. You know, let's deal with this later. So yeah, so it's really good to kind of know them ahead of time before you get into it. All right, so where do you find mentors and advisors? Any thoughts on like where would you actually find a mentor or advisor?
Well, like you were saying earlier with networking, I mean, through people that have offered, you advice. I can't really think of one place, but just down the road, whenever you need things, you meet people.
Right. And it's not like you've heard of like a biker bar where all the bikers hang out. There's no angel bar. It's like, oh, that's all the angel investors hang out there all day. So just go grab a drink and talk to somebody. So yeah, you're right. There's no like one place, but the biggest thing is just getting out, eventing, going to events and whatnot when that's possible. Talk of a what do you call it, a vaccine soon. So hoping that we're getting closer to the point where we can actually, do that kind of stuff. So here's what I have. First of all, the list is first of all, personal connections. I've met a lot of people who are actually surprised to find that somebody in their kind of network already is a really great mentor. For me, when I talked to my dad about this, he's like, your second cousin over in Colorado, in Austin, he's actually a really high level startup person. So he became my first mentor, like a distant cousin. And I still talk to him regularly, some 20 years later. So just go out and see who's in your connections already. Events, going to as many events as you possibly can. While you all are students at Texas A&M, one of the great things is there's all kind of events where you can meet lots of people. So take advantage of every event possible to meet up with potential mentors and people like that. Connectors, there's people in the world who just love to make connections. And I will say hoot, dogs say woof, and connectors say, I got somebody you got to meet. Okay. So when you meet those people and they're really ready to like just help you make connections, make the most of that. Groups and communities, there's all different kinds of like different groups out there that you can find. Build your own community, if nothing else. I know a lot of people who find the need for like a local meetup group or something like that in their community, and it's not there, and they just build it up themselves. And when you become sort of the hub of your own community, you can do a lot with that as far as finding mentors. And then customers, early customers can really be great mentors as well. Any thoughts, additions, anything in this group? All right, cool. Next of all, choosing mentors. This is a really big one. Just because you have somebody who could mentor you doesn't mean they're going to be the ideal mentor. So choosing mentors, there's 4 things that I look at that are really critical. Number 1, relevance in industry. Finding somebody that has some sort of relevance to you and what you do or your industry. So like, for instance, if some of you leave, College Station and move to another place, let's say you live in like Boston or, California or something like that. One great thing is if you meet other Aggies, you immediately have that bond of like having gone to the same school. And that can be a really great thing. I talk to so many people who say, I went to such and such school, and then I met some other mentors from my school as well. And they just want to help you because they have that university bond or the same industry. If you're doing an app that's involved like the dating industry or medical startup, people that are in that industry can be really, really beneficial as mentors. Chemistry. This is one of the things I like about kind of like speed dating style events is that you can establish that chemistry really quickly. So, within a few minutes that you really love talking to each other, you're having a good time, all that kind of stuff. So that chemistry is really there, and it's really critical as well. Hard truths. This is one that didn't initially occur to me, but the more research I did, the more I saw that this was really important. We all sometimes have people in the world, it could be a close friend, parent, whomever that might be, who has an ability to just kind of call us out when we're not fully there yet, you know? So a really good mentor is somebody who can just deliver you hard truths in a way that makes sense to you. If you just want to hear how awesome your startup is, you can always call up your mom. But mentors are there to give you hard truths and to tell you, like, I don't think that's going to work, or you might have to look at this in a different light or something like that. And then accomplishment level as well. One of the really big sort of misinterpretations of mentorship is the Yoda effect. In other words, that your mentor should look like Yoda, be super old, they've lived a ton of life, all that kind of stuff. And they have, like, you know, decades of experience and whatnot. The truth is, on the contrary, a lot of the best mentors are only going to be a couple of years removed from you. And why that's so important is that the things that you're going through are so much more relevant to them because they've only been through it a couple of years earlier. And I always use the example of, you know, like I mentioned, I became a dad a couple of years ago. And when I tried to find advice, like mentorship about parenting, people who had grown children were just like, yeah, babies, they don't sleep much and they poop a lot. It's like, okay, thank you. I knew all that stuff already. Where when you talk to recent parents who had like a 1-year-old, you could be filling up a notebook with all the advice they gave you on every little thing and how to do all this stuff. So finding somebody who's only a couple of years ahead of you, the things you're going through are going to be so much more relevant and fresh in their minds. So just keep that in mind. Oftentimes your mentor is not going to be that much older than you, and that can be really good. The older mentors are often better for the connections and the network building. Okay, so there's different kinds that can be used for different things. All right. This is one of the really critical things about introductions, because introductions, like I mentioned, are a really big part of mentorship. Writing a forwardable email. Has anybody here ever written a forwardable email or know what that actually is? Cool. All right. So what a forwardable email is basically is if you want to get an introduction, if you want somebody to make an introduction, like let's just say you meet somebody and say, oh, Grace or Lexi, I've got somebody you should really meet, so-and-so at this blah, blah, blah. They'd be a really big help to you. You could say, oh, great, thank you, and just leave it at that. Or the correct answer would be to say, that'd be great. Let me write you a forwardable email. What that basically means is that you will write the email for them. Subject line, all that kind of stuff. And then you're going to send that email to that person. That person then makes the connection for you. And they send that email off to the person that you want to meet or that they want you to meet. Okay. And then if that person is interested in meeting you, they make the connection back with you, and then you have a mentor. Okay. There's also something called double blind, which means that when you send the forwardable email, you're not going to be on the initial email when they send it back. And the reason for that is that maybe the person says they're too busy or something like that. And it just makes it a little bit easier. Okay. So that's what a forwardable email is. Why is that important? Like, why do we want to write the email ourselves and forward to them? There's a couple of reasons for that. Anybody?
Well, first, it makes the introduction easier for the other person, and then you might want to include things that are specific that you want the other person to know about you, other than just being general, or maybe the other person giving details that you really, or that are not really relevant.
Exactly. Yeah. When the person says, yeah, I'll make the introduction and that's it, the chance of that actually happening, I would say, is between like the 5 and 10%. Like they're probably going to forget about it or start writing the email and not know what to say. If you send them the forwardable email, I would say it's like a 90% chance of happening. So if you actually want the introduction, that's a really good way of making it happen. And then the other thing is you being able to sort of handle the messaging the right way. And as a startup founder, oftentimes people will spell the name of your company wrong. They'll give you the they'll kind of like misrepresent what your market is or who your competitors are or something like that. That stuff happens all the time. For me, working with 3-Day Startup, I can't tell you how many times I've had, hey, this is Maia from Startup Weekend. It's like, no, totally separate company, like not even close. So if I let them do that, they're going to say, hey, this is Maia from Startup Weekend, and get the whole thing wrong. So you control all that stuff and make sure that that it actually happens the right way. So this is an example of what a forwardable email looks like. We've got June, and she is the startup founder. Okay. She talks to Eric, and Eric is the connector, and Eric is going to connect June to somebody named Joe. All right, a lot of moving pieces here, but bear with me. And I'm going to kind of walk you through what a forwardable email will look like in this place. Okay, so June sends the email, subject, meet June from Baggage. Hey, Erica, it's great talking to you yesterday at the Seal launch. Thanks again for offering to make the introduction to your friend Joe from Bumble. And next of all, you see the second one is kind of like the really, really quick like elevator pitch. Our company is called Baggage. It's a dating app for people with some, well, baggage. Then a little bit more. We've just launched the MVP for Baggage. By the way, what does MVP stand for? Anybody?
Minimal viable product.
Yeah, minimum viable product. So basically it's like a really simple product, no bells and whistles. It just does the bare minimum and that's it. We've just launched the MVP and we're already got a handful of paying customers. One thing we're lacking is the opportunity to learn from somebody with experience and talks about, I want to meet Joe. Okay. So she sends this email to Eric. Eric goes ahead and sends this email to Joe. And you can say, kind of begins with a little bit of banter up top. Hey, how's it going? Saw your photos of South America. I'm writing because I met this founder doing a dating app and she really wants to connect with you. Let me know and I'll make the introduction. And below is that email. Okay. So this person can see, cool, it's from my friend. And below is a little bit of details on who this person is and why they want to meet with me. Okay. It just makes it super easy to facilitate that contact. Also, this is standard practice on the kind of like the higher levels of entrepreneurship. So if you say, let me write a forwardable email, you will create joy in the hearts of so many people that are like, oh my God, this person gets it, and you'll get a lot of credibility for getting it right from that standpoint. Okay. So that's a forwardable email. Any questions about that at all? Comments, anything? Cool. All right. Preparation. This is one of the major things that came up a lot. And since I wrote the book, I actually make sure to use this checklist for every meeting I make still. So it's just a really good meeting checklist to put together. So first of all, if you're having a meeting with somebody, set an agenda. This is one of the biggest things of all. What do you actually want to meet with this? Like, what is the reason you actually want to meet with this person? And a thing that I found a lot when it came to mentorship is so many people who are setting up meetings with a mentor didn't even know why they wanted to meet. So they just kind of like would sit down and be like, cool. So what do you think we should do? It's like, that's a really broad question. It's kind of like sitting down to somebody and saying, hey, thanks. So how do I find true love? It's like, well, that's a really big question. We could talk about this all day. Like, tell me more. Like, where are you now? What do you need? Like, help me more than just asking, look, what is true love? What do you like? Get really specific of what you actually need help with. Your agenda could only be one item, could be 2 or 3, up to you. But share that agenda ahead of time so that person can actually see what it is you need help with and whether they can help you. Second one, be on time. Super obvious, but important. Third of all, watch the clock. If that person says, I've got a half hour of my time, make sure that you don't stay for like 45 minutes or an hour or something like that. And one thing is, it was brought up at one of my talks, and I think it's a great point that it might look kind of rude if you're like looking at your watch a lot and saying like, oh, I got to go in 5 minutes or something like that. And that's why I think it can be really great to like, if you do look at your watch, you could be talking and say, all right, so I see it's 2:30 and I didn't want to, I know you've only got until 2:45, so I didn't want to use up too much of your time. You are sort of noting the fact that me looking at my watch is actually me being considerable, being considerate of your time rather than being impatient or bored or something like that. So watch the clock and make sure that you're aware of how much time you actually have with that person. That can set a really good impression. Take notes. So many people don't do that. You really set the impression that you're listening and paying attention when you take notes. And then a final minute run through. So I think it's really great, the last like minute or two, just kind of open up your notebook and say, cool. So this has been awesome. You mentioned the blah, blah, blah. You talked about that article in the Harvard Business Review. I'm gonna read that and take a look at that and whatnot. So you're kind of like going through everything that you talked about and making it clear that you've actually learned something from that. Side note, I mentioned kind of like you mentioned the article thing. That is a very, very common thing when you meet with a mentor for the first time, is that they recommend an article or a book or something like that. This is the lowest hanging fruit. You can generate so much positive social capital by, if somebody recommends a book, read the damn book. And like, you make such a big impression when you send an email back like a month later and saying, oh, by the way, that book you recommended, I read it and I loved it. You just really say that person's time and opinion is worthwhile, and you just generate so much, really good social capital from that. Then follow through after that. So meeting is over. Majority of mentees, they never even send a follow-up email. There's nothing that happens afterwards. The mentor never hears from them again. So that is a very poor follow-up, okay? I would say like 9 out of 10 people don't even bother to send an email to say thank you. Say doing the average would be just send an email and says thanks. After the meeting, like, hey, so-and-so, like, really want to thank you for your time. I know you're super busy and I really appreciate it. That's awesome. You're doing great. But then the superstar thing is detailing the actual impact that meeting had, okay? So let's just say that person mentions, you meet with a person to talk about, prototyping for your product or something like that. And they point out some things and say, I noticed that you're working your prototype towards this customer, but you might want to try this instead. Let's say that you go back, you talk to your co-founders and you try that advice. and you meet up and you send the mentor an email like 3 weeks later and you say, again, thank you so much for meeting with us. By the way, we tried your advice and wow, what a huge difference this has made. This is really kind of like changed our outlook and whatnot. That brightens the day of that mentor so much. It sends such a positive signal that you're actually listening and helping. Also, just from a pure self-interest standpoint, that mentor is going to be so much more likely to meet up with you again when you prove that you actually listen and do the things that they say. And importantly, it doesn't just have to be like, I followed your advice and it worked. It can be the opposite. It can say, hey, you mentioned the such and such. We tried that and it just, in this case, it didn't really work. You're just letting them know either way that you're actually listening, and that can be really powerful. All right, any questions? I've been talking a lot, so I want to kind of see if anybody has any questions or comments at this point. Cool, okay. So making an ask. I will say one thing really important: never ask for money or high-level introductions at a first meeting. Okay, so you're meeting somebody for the first time. Never ask them to invest in your company, or could you introduce me to Mark Cuban or something like that at your first meeting. So those are things that take up some time, to sort of build up. So when making your ask, really consider your mentor's time and social capital. One really easy way of doing this is just drawing a simple kind of bar, like a simple XY grid and putting this together right here. What do I want from a mentor, and how challenging is it for my mentor? Okay. This isn't a perfect science, but what it does do is it gets you in your mentor's shoes to get a sense of the thing you're asking, how big is that thing? Okay. And I say this because I've had a lot of people that I meet with for the first time and they say, can you introduce me to a co-founder, like a CTO type of person? It's like, dude, I just met you 30 minutes ago. I'm not going to introduce you to like some super high level CTO person who's probably making 180 grand a year to come work for free for you. Like, we need to do more work before we get to that point, right? So what do I want from the mentor, and how challenging is it for the mentor? And again, you're considering time and social capital. So here's some examples. If like the thing on the agenda with the mentor is critique my business model, what do you guys think? Is that like easy, medium, or hard as far as like social capital and time is considered? Would that be like easy, kind of medium, or would that be like a really big ask?
I'm guessing that would be pretty easy.
Totally, yeah. You're just saying like, hey, this is what our startup does. Our business model is that we're going to do a subscription plus ad, and we think our customers are these people. That's the kind of thing where you can sit down for coffee with somebody, and they can just right there hack it out with you and just be like, interesting, I think you're charging too much, and I'm not sure that, you might want to look at a more specific early adopter or something like that. Boom, you can crank that out in a little bit. What about review my accelerator application? First of all, what's an accelerator? Anybody? Okay, so an accelerator it's a 3-month program where they accept like 10 startups to come in, and basically they work for 3 months, cranking out their product, meeting investors, PR people, all kinds of stuff, and just really moving the product, the company to the next level. That's an accelerator. Y Combinator is probably the most prestigious accelerator in the world, and some of the companies that come out of that accelerator are like Reddit, Airbnb, Dropbox, companies like that. So that's what an accelerator actually is, and you have to apply to get in. It's really tricky. So review my accelerator application. What do you think? Like medium, easy, or hard for that one?
Easy.
I would say, yeah, I would say it takes up some time. Like, the person's gonna have to like look through your answers, critique them, all that kind of stuff. But they're not offering any of their social capital necessarily. So I'd say that's like a medium. What about introduce me to angel investors? What do you guys say? So I would say for that one, that would definitely be more of like a hard, because when people have asked me that, I have to first of all think through the people I know. What are they investing in? Are they currently investing? All that kind of stuff. And then, so that takes time just to figure out all that stuff. And then there's a lot of social capital involved as well. If I introduce somebody to an angel investor and the meeting doesn't go well, that reflects badly on me. So I have to really think through, am I comfortable making this introduction right now? And that's where there's a lot of social capital involved. The more positive social capital that person creates, the more willing I am to do that kind of meeting. or anybody for that matter. Okay. Intuition. Founders must know when to trust their intuition and even go against a mentor's advice. One of the things that came up a lot, I'm sorry, first of all, I knew I missed a slide there. A mentor's story can really help guide a founder's intuition. The thing with intuition is it's something that we develop through pattern recognition. We see things happen a lot, and over time, we sort of sense patterns. And what intuition is that's when we are able to sort of make decisions quickly without having to consciously sort of think through it. And that's because we recognize something. As startup founders, we haven't really gotten there yet. We don't have enough of that experience. And a mentor's story can really help us sort of like fill in the blanks and kind of create our own intuition so we can make decisions more quickly. One of the most common things that came up when it came to mentorship, though, was knowing when to sort of trust your gut and your intuition and actually go against a mentor. That happened quite often. So you really need to know when to trust your intuition and go against a mentor's advice as well. And that's one of the hardest things to do as far as intuition is concerned. What I talk about in the book is when it comes to knowing your intuition, I think it's sometimes good to know when it's not your intuition. And there's some things that really can get in the way. A couple of those are, first of all, imposter syndrome. What does that mean, imposter syndrome? Anybody? Anybody heard that term before? It's kind of when,
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you feel like a fake.
You feel like a fake, exactly. Like you feel like I've got this idea for a startup, but who am I? Like I'm not Elon Musk or somebody like that. I'm just some kid at college. I don't know what I'm doing. And that would be a person who doesn't trust their intuition because they think they're maybe kind of a fake anyways. So they just kind of ignore their intuition and just go with whatever. That's one way you're ignoring your intuition. Another one is the opposite of that, pride. Where you're so proud, you have so much pride that you sort of feel like you made a call and you're going to stick with it, even though it's the wrong call, just because you're too proud to admit otherwise. So I think those are two really good examples of when you might not be following your intuition. Assumptions are another really big one. Unfamiliarity plus assumptions can cause trouble. And one of the hard things about being a startup founder is you're often going to be having to make decisions in a place where you are dealing with a landscape that you're not familiar with. I've never dealt with a decision like this. And oftentimes your decision is going to be based on an assumption. Do you understand that assumption pretty well or not very well at all? And that can really make a big difference between, whether you're getting yourself into trouble or not. So when meeting with a mentor, oftentimes it can be really valuable to sort of stage a thing you're asking or whatnot by even stating out your assumption, saying, we are thinking of doing such and such, thing. And the reason why is that my assumption is this, or something like that. And when you state your assumption, it gives your mentor a really great opportunity to actually sort of unpack that assumption and sort of say why it may or may not be correct. So one example of that is a founder says, so we built this technology, and the thing that I think we need, my assumption right now is that we need to get a patent for our company. And my assumption about a patent is that it'll make it so that nobody else can steal our technology, or we'll have the whole thing to ourselves. And in this case, that mentor might say, look, when people think of patents, they oftentimes think of it like, you see those car commercials where the car is driving down Highway 1 in California, and it's like this beautiful coastline, oceans and waves, and there's not a single car anywhere else on the highway. I think people think of the patent as like that. It's like, and it's not like that at all. It's actually, it's something that you end up having to defend in court. And if you go up against a big company, they might actually challenge your patent just so you have to put all your money into it, okay? So that would be an area where the person's assumption about a patent was incorrect. And talking to a mentor who knows that can be really, really beneficial by sort of stating that assumption and letting them challenge that. All right, vulnerability and coachability. Why would these traits be important for a startup founder? Displaying vulnerability and being coachable. Why would those things matter, I guess?
Being coachable is huge. It means you're actually listening as a founder, you're actually listening to what your mentor has to say. Nobody really wants to coach somebody who knows it all anyways. And then being vulnerable is basic human is a way to make relationships, I guess. People want to help somebody that's vulnerable, whereas if you're closed off, you kind of come off cold, and then nobody wants to help you at all.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the coachability thing is in all walks of life. Like if you have like let's just say you've got a quarterback for the Aggies who isn't coachable and they've got all kinds of problems in their footwork or something like that. If they're not coachable, there's only so much you can do with that person because they're just not willing to listen and get better at something, right? Same thing is true for startup founders. If you're not coachable, your mentors might be telling you, look, you know, when you do such and such, you're not getting ahead because of this or something like that, or whatever that might be. And if they're not coachable, they just can't grow very much. And that's going to get really frustrating. And then the vulnerability thing also, like somebody can't help you if you don't display what your vulnerability is. And the example I use of that is imagine you go to the doctor because you've got some weird symptoms that just don't look good at all, and not like cold symptoms, but something worse than that, right? And we'll just say not COVID-19 because that's the hot thing right now. But so let's just say you've got some really weird symptoms and you go to the doctor and the doctor walks in and says, hey, Shelby, I understand you're not feeling well. Tell me what's wrong. You'd be like, well, actually, doctor, I'm feeling great. I eat super well. I run 10 miles a day. I've never felt better in my life. I'm just like awesome. I'm going to live to be over 100. Like I'm doing great. The doctor's wondering, why did you come in? Like, why are you here then if you're feeling so awesome? This happens all the time with startups where a startup will just basically meet with a mentor and they'll be like, so what can I help you with? And all they'll do is they'll kind of go into sales mode and talk about how awesome their product does, how awesome their team is. They'll just kind of brag about how cool things are. Not the time for that. Your mentor can't help you if they don't know what you're having problems with. So you really need to be open with those vulnerabilities. And that's something where they're going to be able to really help you move forward. All right. Any other thoughts, questions on that? Any general stuff at all? Cool. Giving back is everything. And I always feel bad that there's only one slide about this because giving back is huge. You see a lot of companies where a mentor feels like the team is always kind of like asking for favors, but they're never giving anything back in return. And that can be really, really difficult. Importantly, I think giving back is more of a mindset than an act. But it's really, really important that you're willing to kind of take on that mindset and help out whenever you can by giving back. Oftentimes it's as simple as just saying like, hey, this has been great. I really want to thank you for meeting up with me. What can I do for you? That simple question, or that simple kind of like question, comment, whatever you like, just what can I do for you? It sets the stage that you want this to be more of a relationship where you're giving something back as well. The majority of the time, they're probably going to say like, I can't think of anything, but thanks. But sometimes they will. They'll say like, funny you should ask. I actually wanted to see if you would be willing to help with such and such or something like that. And that makes it more of a relationship where you're giving back to each other. And that can really help grow mentorship over time to the point where you're going to get some really good stuff out of it as well. So I think giving back is more of a mindset than anything else. I think also for students, it's important to understand that a high-level mentor, especially somebody who's been really successful, the things they want are going to be very different from what you want. So I had a student at Old Dominion in Georgia, and I'm sorry, Virginia, who said this giving back thing is tricky because he said, I have this mentor who I was talking about this conference I really wanted to go to. And this guy, I think he was like the founder of like Cheesecake Factory or something like that, really like super wealthy, super successful guy. And he heard this student say that. He's like, oh, you want to go to the such and such conference? He's like, well, listen, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. I'll have my assistant so-and-so contact you and she'll take care of the whole thing. So this mentor basically like had his plane tickets, hotel, like even gave him like a stipend, like $100 for food and everything like that. And this kid was just like, oh my God, like this is so amazing. And he kind of had this mentality of like, how do I give back to a person who does something like that for me? And he was thinking from the standpoint of a totally broke college kid who like the $1,000 is like a big deal, Well, the founder of Cheesecake Factory, you think he cares about $1,000? It's nothing to him, right? What he does care about is that sense of like purpose and legacy. The fact that he's passing on to something to a younger generation is a really powerful thing. And feeling like this young student is, grateful, is learning something from him, and something that can really be passed on even someday when he's gone is a really, really powerful thing. So just that giving back is a mindset more than anything else. Then finally, the long way of looking at this is take on mentorship in such a way that eventually you see your mentor as more of a peer than just a mentor. Because one question is, where does this evolve over time? Like you meet up initially and you are a university student or a recent graduate, and this person has been much more successful than you. It doesn't stay like that forever, right? Eventually you're going to get to the point where you accrue a lot of success of your own. And at that point, that mentor is going to be something more of a peer. And have any of you ever had those moments where you look back at your life and you say, what a weird and strange and crazy like life that has led me to be right where I am today? You know, sometimes we think of that. And I think that if you could see your life 10 years from now, and the only thing you knew is that, like, let's say your startup or whatever you're doing was super successful. And like, I should say, like, you knew like through the lens of your mentor, that mentor helped you with your company. And the only thing you knew is that, I'm sorry, I totally screwed that up. Let's just say from 10 years, you look 10 years into the future, and the only thing you knew about your mentor is that person saw you as a peer, as an equal, okay? You wouldn't know if your company has succeeded or whatever that might be, but you knew you did something right because that person saw you as an equal. I think that's a really good way to proceed, is make that person into more of your peer than anything else. Like I said, you'll just really know that you've done something right. And that's the talk. So we've got some time left for any questions or comments or anything like that.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat.
All right, so, okay, I see some. Go ahead, yeah.
Sorry if there's a lot of background noise. I just had a couple questions about giving back more so to those around you and towards your mentor. So it's not exactly a direct exchange. It's kind of more an exchange between like the entire business community.
Yeah, it's not a direct exchange so much, but giving back is more of a mindset of helping somebody out with things like all kinds of stuff. So it's a mindset being that it's more like you don't want to just take, but you want to be able to give things as well. So Grace, one thing that I really liked a lot, especially talk to like older mentors, maybe in their like 60s and 70s. One of the things that you can give back is just they manage to stay plugged in with what's going on with your generation. And that can be an awesome way of sort of giving back. So like, it's easy for them to kind of fall out of step with what's happening, and just knowing like, this is the things that we do these days. This is like technology that we use. This is how we do things. We don't use Facebook, we use this or something like that. Even just giving that kind of like insight into how people think, that can be really, really powerful as well. But it's the mindset more than anything. It's helping out, it's giving feedback, advice. I've had situations where somebody who's really successful can say, we're launching a new product. Can I actually ask you some questions? Because like you are like right in our customer group. How would you handle such and such? And giving honest feedback is another really great way of giving back. Yeah, great question. Yeah.
And we have a question from the chat, and Lexi asked, on a macro level, where do you see us as a society heading as it pertains to startups?
Where do I see us as a society where it pertaining to startups? That's a great question. Wow, there's a lot to get into here. I feel like we're getting better at the community angle of it. And I think that's a really important part, is that startups don't happen individually of one person cranking away in their basement or the garage. It's the community part is really, really essential. So I think that's one thing that we're getting better at as a society, is learning that mentors, advisors, connectors, just all different kinds of people in a community all have a role. So getting out and like networking as much as you possibly can and talking to as many people as you possibly can is helping a lot. Also, I think we're coming to some really interesting points as far as startups changing a lot. So for instance, 5G is evolving all the time, and that's going to open up all kinds of new technologies that were never there before. And also, I think just with this pandemic, it's made things really, really different, where some companies have sort of failed and some are starting to sort of grow as well. So there's a lot of, I think, shifting that's happening as well. Another thing super nerdy to kind of keep in mind is what happens with antitrust laws. Does anybody know what antitrust is? What that actually means? Yeah, Paul, what's antitrust? I think you nodded.
It's about monopolies.
Precisely, monopolies. So what's kind of interesting is that antitrust law right now is all about if you have cheap options, something couldn't be considered a monopoly. That's a problem for big tech companies, because raise your hand if any of you paid your Facebook bill this month. How many of you paid your Google bill this month? Right? Nobody, because you are the product. We are the products. That idea of antitrust doesn't pertain to like a Facebook, a Google, things like that. The reason this is important is that government is starting to look at antitrust, and they could break up some of these companies and like divide them. And that might create a lot more room for some new industries to take hold that have not been able to do that for quite a while. All right. let's see.
And then I'll ask you another question as well. What action do you believe students at Texas A&M should take based off of your experience?
What actions?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I would say when you meet with mentors, get into the habit of figuring out, what is the thing that you want to meet with that mentor about, and how can you show them progress over time? Okay. So the biggest mistake I think a lot of people make is they just meet with a mentor without any real sense of why, what am I going to get out of this, all that kind of stuff. So meet up with a mentor, but come at it with a very specific, like, this is how I'm going to show progress over time, and just see how that person's, like, how your sort of credibility grows with that person. Credibility, like social capital, same kind of thing. Build that up over time, and that could be something where they really gain a lot of trust in you and want to help you. So, like, find a way to meet with people, but then figure out, like, what do I actually want to get out of this? What could this person do for me? And the reason I put together that XY grid chart is that making it so that you can kind of think through these things in a sense that is a thing that's actually attainable, that you're not asking for something that's almost impossible or something like that. So that would be the thing. I'd say just meet up with mentors and figure out, like, what is it that we could do that I can sort of show progress over time.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, and I don't want to cut anyone off, so I'm just going to give it another minute.
Well, Judith, there were some other questions available?
I have one more. I have a question.
Okay, sure.
This pertains to kind of my dilemma. So I have a few ideas that I want to like get working on, but I have many years of school left, and after that, I plan to go work and get experience in the field and, continue down that path. But what can I do now, for the next 3 years of school to start to at least help myself?
Yeah, as a startup founder, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question, because you're right. You're not going to build a scalable startup while you're in school. It's like that takes up all your time. So that's not going to happen. What I would say is start building a low-cost prototype and testing it out with people. That's something that you can do right now. I'll give an example, and I think this was actually it was one of the teams here at UT Austin, 3DS UT Austin. They had a startup, and their startup was called Seat Potato. And here's the thing: so you go to a game, and you're watching the Aggies, and you really want to get a hot dog and a Pepsi, but it's like the game is happening right now. It's the third quarter. LSU is about to come back, and you don't want to miss anything, right? So you don't want to go off to the concession stand and miss a big play or something like that. So what Seat Potato was basically you could just get your phone, order your hot dog and your Pepsi, and have it ordered right to your seat. So that was a startup idea. How do they build this? When I first met with these guys, they were saying, like, how do we meet an angel investor so that they can fund the company so that we can hire a software developer and all that kind of stuff? And I said, you don't need to do any of that stuff. Build a cheap prototype and just test it. So what these guys did is they first of all went to a bunch of high school stadiums in Texas, I think like Westlake and a bunch of those, and explained what the product was going to be. We want to do this for you guys, and we're going to do it for free. Okay. So then they got a free website, I think on like Wix or Weebly or something like that, and they just bought like seatpotato.com or something like that. I forget what the actual URL was. And all they did was they uploaded the menu onto their website, and then had a form, which just said, like, what's your seat number? What are you ordering? That's all that was on the form. So somebody they sell like a big pop-up, like, hey, you want to order something? Go to seatpotato.com. Somebody like, cool. All right, I'm in seat 65B. They type in 65B into their phone. Pepsi, hot dog, send. All right. So the founders would then get a text message. The text message would say Pepsi, Coke, 65B. They would actually go to the concession stand, pay out of their own wallets for the food, bring it out to the seat, and say, okay, and then they added like 25% on top of that. So that'll be like, instead of $10, that'll be $12.50. And then they had their little like Square reader card and took the payment. This cost them basically the $10 to buy the URL and nothing else. And they were able to go and test the product and see that it works. You can do that now. You can do that kind of stuff now with the tools that are available to you. Get that out there, test it with customers. And the great thing about that is you talk to a software developer, an investor, whomever that might be. If you can say, we actually have traction, we built this thing and proved that people in the market like it, that is awesome. That is like the best thing you can possibly do right now.
All right, thank you. I like that idea with the software developer. I might want to talk to some people and stuff.
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. No problem. Yeah. Other questions?
What would you say the biggest mistake you made starting up your business was that you wouldn't make if you did it again?
Oh man, it's the mentorship thing. Like that, I'm telling you, like, the first mentor I met with was this really brilliant person, and I got a meeting with her, and she actually invited me over to her house. So we sat on her back porch and talked, and I just completely wasted her time. I had no idea what I wanted. I was just shooting the breeze, talking about this and that, staying way too long. And as I left, I was like, she's probably wondering why the hell I came. Like, what was that all about? You know, that was a really big thing. I think the other thing was, I had a co-founder there was a little bit of kind of shadiness, if you will. And my intuition was, you need to stop working with this person. And I should have trusted my intuition a little bit earlier. So I think that was another really big one. Like, you have that feeling in your gut, like, this isn't quite right. And you need to listen to that. Don't it? And one of the worst feelings, I'm sure a lot of you had this, is the feeling of like, when you ignore your intuition. That's a really bad feeling when you're like, I knew better. I freaking knew better. And I ignored that. That's a really bad feeling. Let's see, since everyone is so unique, does it take a couple of tries to find the right mentor for you? Absolutely. And and oftentimes people have several mentors. But yeah, like, it's not unusual to meet with a potential mentor and just be like, this hasn't been a super great fit. That's fine. No loss there. You just move on, right? And then you'll find somebody who's a great mentor, and you just love meeting with that person. You keep getting a lot out of it, you know? So yeah, I think it does take definitely several tries.
One more thing, like, what is it that you've done? You know, what did you start up, and what have you worked on, you know, the majority of your life, you know?
Yeah, so I was actually in many ways kind of a late starter. I spent a lot of my 20s just traveling the world and on road trips and stuff like that. Then I went to University of Wisconsin. My company was a rideshare startup, not like Uber, but an actual like carpooling startup. We worked on that for a couple of years, and it was in the end, it was a failed company. We didn't get a product off the ground. So that was kind of what our experience was. But even in the failure of that, there was so much learning from that. So I think that was the biggest thing. So since then, it's been a lot of 3-day startup. I wrote the book. I travel all around the world and facilitate as well. Paul, I think I had a question from you.
That's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. How do you perhaps say your goodbyes to a mentor that isn't the right fit for you in a very respectful and grateful manner? You know, that's a great question. I don't think you need to sort of break up the way you would in a relationship. You know, like if you have a mentor and like, it's not working, you just say, hey, this has been great. Thank you for your time. And there doesn't need to be a next meeting. They're not going to be like, what the hell, you know? You just say, this has been really great. Thank you. Send them a follow-up email, say, thanks for your time, but you don't need to like keep following up after that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Maya. We can do a virtual round of applause.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Woo. This has been great. So if you go to the website, I just chat that, maiapatrickdonohue.com. That's where you can get a copy of the book. And then Judith, I don't know how you want to handle the sort of raffle element of it.
Yeah, so I'm using an online software. I put everyone's names. When you RSVP'd, I got your name from there. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to do kind of like the random pick of the name. And if that person is in the chat, then that's going to be the winner. But if it's not, then we'll choose until it picks someone that is here.
Okay.
That sounds good. Okay. So
those names. This is kind of fun.
Jacob Phillips.
We know you're there. All right.
Yeah. Oh man, I was gonna have to buy one if I didn't win it.
Oh man, can you try again with somebody else?
No. I'll buy another one for my friend.
All right. Well, congratulations to the lucky winner. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. So,
Jacob, do you want a paperback or a Kindle or a PDF?
I'll take a paperback.
Cool. Awesome. Good stuff. Thank you, everybody. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you all coming here. And don't be a stranger, all right? And you can even find me on LinkedIn at Maia Patrick Donohue. I'd love to see some of you guys there.
Thank you so much, Maya.
All right. Take care.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yep.